Is it true that traffic now is not only humans?
There's good and bad bots. And so you want to make sure that those bots can, in fact, crawl your site. Things that you might do to drive AEO, does that hurt your SEO score? We're all so excited to see what we can create. Imagine what the future could look like.
Hi, Linda, and welcome to Inference Show by Turing Post. I'm very happy to have you here.
Very stoked to be here. Thank you for making time and excited to chat with you.
You're leading Webflow, a 4 billion no-code web development platform, and you're leading it through an amazing times. It's a total AI transformation.
Oh, yeah.
So my question is, there's a new species online now, right? Not quite APIs, not quite people, more like, as Karpathy called it, and I love it, human spirits on the internet. Is it true that traffic now is not only humans? Do you see these spirits? And when did this shift started?
Absolutely. It's interesting because I would say what people are looking for is like a hard fact of what percentage of traffic is human and what percentage are spirits or bots or whatever you want to call them. I see very mixed sort of patterns across the board down to every individual site. So some sites will be heavily human, 90% of the traffic might be human, 10% might be bots or spirits. Some might actually be 90% bots, 10% human. So it's pretty inconsistent across the board, but I am seeing in many situations a growing percentage or a growing chunk of overall traffic to any site, and also from a distribution perspective, any percentage of the top of funnel of sort of referring traffic is coming in fact from either bots or chat bots that are in fact starting to really direct a good chunk of internet traffic.
When did it start?
Actually, it started way over a year ago. We started seeing these trends early last year. We started seeing small peaks and stuff here and there. It became wildly disruptive last summer, and I've only seen it increase. And so if I were to follow the trend lines of what I'm seeing, it's going to be a majority of traffic, by the end of this year. But it's been a growing trend. This isn't new by any means.
Interesting. So what do you do with that? Does it influence you seriously?
Absolutely. First, it's really important to understand what is it, right? What exactly is it and how should you be thinking about it? And so, when we think about bot traffic, there's good and bad bots, right? I love to live in binaries. We've always had bots. This isn't a new concept. There are bad bots that sort of do nefarious things, DDoS your sites and things like that. But there are now this concept of good bots. These good bots could be from major LLMs. It could be, bots that are trying to index your site, understand you, and help reference you in response to queries that are coming in through, chatbots. And so you want to make sure that those bots can, in fact, crawl your site and interact with it and understand it. And we're seeing a significant increase because as more and more companies build their own models and build their own sort of, chat search functionality, it is creating more and more of these agents that are out there that are ultimately interacting with and crawling websites. And what we've seen is this increase in, bot traffic overall, both good and bad. But what's important is, some people are like, oh, should I just block it? And I'm like, no, don't block it. Because in fact, a lot of what we used to do as a company when, the majority of our traffic was, search traffic and it was, organic search, you wanted Google to index your site. Right? This is the entire concept behind SEO. This is now, what people are calling AEO or GEO or AIO, but it's a sort of finding a way to SEO these, AI-backed, chatbots. And so being available to be referenced and indexed is super important, and ensuring that they have access to your site is key. So blocking them is not an option. However, understanding how they index and understand your site and then surface it, I think is key. The same way that we've reverse engineered search to figure out how do we SEO our way into the top page of search results, there is a new opportunity to try and reverse engineer how these different models are indexing us in sort of these chat results. It uses very different weightings. So whether it's your site structure, how your content is distributed, the freshness of your content, references to things outside of owned and operated properties, think social or influence sources. So Reddit, it ranks really highly in terms of weighting. There are a lot of considerations in terms of how you want to optimize your site to interact with these bots and effectively help you rank in this new AEO, GEO, AIO world.
Well, yeah, this is the very beginning of it. We still don't know how to interact with them and how to let them interact with the software. Do you think LLMs.txt instead of, let's say, raw HTML, CSS, JavaScript. This is a way to speak directly to agents. Also, clickable URLs are not possible for agents, right? That needs to be changed. When you think about this changing of the infrastructure and how you help build websites for other people, what is your action plan to build websites for agents?
Yeah, so it's still early days. Something that I believe deep down is the same way that mobile came on the scene in, 2009 really, and started to blow up through the 2010 and beyond. And people were like, oh, I need a mobile optimized site. I think we are going to need agent optimized sites that are built to interact with these, agentic workflows and these different LLMs that are trying to really understand and sort of index these sites. And I think the structure of that will be fundamentally different. And we need a new version of what is a website that is specifically catered to that audience. The type of information that it's consuming, the way it wants to interact, whether, you actually want these agents to actually take sort of action on your site, were designed today for humans and not agents. And, we have to just think about them as a different audience that is still trying to accomplish the same goal, but as a fundamentally different way of working. And so that's something we're thinking deeply about at Webflow, of how do we actually build an agent first site, and what does that look like? And how do we make it seamless? Because what this is doing to businesses, to teams, to marketers, it's already complex enough to build a website and think about all these different sort of breakpoints, from mobile to tablet to web to other sort of device types. It's a lot of work to think about that. And now we're adding a whole new experience that they now have to keep in the back of their mind and build for. Because it's not like you can say, oh, I'm just going to build these agent first sites, forget the website. Like, it's just more complexity. And so we're thinking about how do we make that really seamless and ensure that we are catering appropriately to the different types of audiences that are out there.
So how do you build for this audience? What are the most important things for agents?
For agents, probably the biggest thing is like an easy way to reference data, right? So sites that are incredibly have deep site architectures that are really convoluted, that have, sort of mixed publishing points, that have differentiated, different content. These agents are really trying to consume the site structure, the brand principles, and overall sort of navigational principles, and then the context of the site. There are better ways to deliver that. Similar to how people build sitemaps today, there are much easier ways to actually surface that information versus forcing these agents to crawl every single page and every single interaction and actually consume all that. Because right now, human interactions are highly catered to delight and sharing experiences and rich content. And some of that content, when agents are actually scraping the site, it's just skipping it, but it's still hitting it. It's creating bandwidth consumption. It's an expensive action. And so there is sort of a need to create a simplified view of what is a site and what is on it and how is information structured, that it's much easier to consume. I think the other thing that's really important, and you kind of hinted at this, is how do you think about links? Because your site is only one asset. How do you think about your representation on the internet, where you've distributed content, where you have maybe other sites, other experiences, and how does this all fit together? Because ultimately, these agents are trying to understand your business, your brand, and this is just one asset. So then it has to go connect all these dots. So finding ways to represent that in a meaningful way, I think actually can help tell a consistent story and surface your digital experiences more effectively. And then the third is being really, there's a strong weighting towards recency. And this is just, intuitive, but sites that are actively managed and maintained and are fresh and have authentic, real, opinionated content on them are just going to rank higher than sites that haven't been touched in a long time. And so there is a need to empower teams to go faster, to really tell their stories more effectively, and move with a level of speed that frankly didn't exist before, so that they can stay relevant. Because relevance and dynamism are directly tied to each other and heavily weighted in how these agents are, understanding your business.
Right. So that's mostly about reading the information. What about the action? How you make the agent click that button?
Part of it, it's a user experience. It's a mix of, one, can you simplify your user experience? So are there, whether it's APIs, or do you want to actually build an MCP that an agent can interact with to take specific actions on your site, on your product? And right now people are leveraging, that's why I'm seeing people leverage MCPs mostly to actually build these sort of capabilities for agents to actually start to interact with your site. They're still convoluted, right? The MCP is layered on top of your, what I would call your human user journey. And I think that there are, APIs were actually really designed to be the way that you can go direct to the source that you want to do and sort of call the action you want to call and interact in a way. And so I think actually understanding which ones you want to make available to an agent and actually publishing maybe a manifest of sorts, an unlock, what are all the actions that you do want people to take, and how can an agent interact with them, and what are the guardrails around it. That's something that is, people are trying to simplify with an MCP. And I think that that's probably the midterm solution. But longer term, I think, agentic platforms that are specifically hooked into those actions are likely what's going to take hold.
Do you think it will be like dual outputs, visual and user experience for humans and semantic for LLMs and agents?
Possibly. I actually think it's going to be more of a hybrid. I think the reason why AI has taken off the way it has, and the way that, we're seeing such a disruption of how we operate, is because the human specific interactions weren't cutting it, right? If those were enough, I don't think we would actually seek alternative solutions. People complain about enterprise SaaS software all the time because you're like, oh, I just want to update this one thing. I want to file an expense report. I want to, very simple things that we all have to do. And you're like, why is this so hard? And now with AI, you're like, oh, I can make it so easy. So I do think that there is a very real need to simplify these activities. And I think there's still a world where there isn't full trust, such that you're like, you know what, I just have an agent do everything for me and I'm just going to sit back and do nothing. There's still this human in the loop interaction. And I think we're likely going to be in a hybrid mode for quite some time. I think the dream state is can it be totally automated and agentic? And can we all, just go watch Netflix every day? But my suspicion is we're likely going to be in a hybrid world. And what that means is you're going to want agentic workflows, but you're going to want those to interact with a user experience that is human oriented. So something that is a little bit more visual and a little bit more easy to understand and interact with, such that the way that we collaborate with agents can feel human natural, but where there's a lot of sort of overhead or tasks oriented, that agents can start to automate that, such that the interaction is intentional and purposeful where a human is needed.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was thinking. Before our conversation, I was playing with Claude, trying to build a website. And, it's not ideal, but you can tell it, no, I don't like this color. It sucks.
Yeah.
Give me a color of a sea in the morning under the light of a sun. And it gives you something, more or less, right?
Yeah.
So this is very conversational. You have AI agent builder, AI site builder,
Yep.
and it has a prompt, you can edit it, but it's not a conversation. So do you think to make Webflow conversational, merging these two entities, agentic, humans, conversations?
I can't announce anything, but we are. Good
question. I will tell no one.
Our vision as a company, so just rewinding a little bit, Webflow's been around for quite some time. We were founded in 2012, and the vision is actually quite revolutionary if you think about it. Our vision is to bring developer superpowers to everyone. Right. I think we get branded as a no-code platform because that was sort of the movement. But the core thesis behind it is that everyone should be able to build for the web. And ultimately, everyone should be able to create. Right. I think the power of humans is our innate ability to be creative and have ideas and, sort of imagine what the future could look like. And what Webflow is here to do is to unlock that and to be a partner to human creativity and start to take those ideas and turn them into reality. The way we started was with a visual builder, and it allowed people who did not know how to code to visually create incredible, powerful websites that match the power of code. And now with AI, it just accelerates that vision, right? It's a different format. Instead of visually or maybe paired with visually, you can now articulate what you want. You could speak it, you could type it. I actually think there's a further version where, sometimes I might want to say, make this website reflect the sunset in Athens, Greece. I want to sort of channel the Mediterranean, and it can do that. But I may also want to say, hey, I might want to interact with it, right? I've only seen LLMs right now with natural language, with typing or speaking, but we haven't even unlocked other formats of, can I actually draw something, or can I visually interact with it and actually unlock creativity? And so I don't know exactly what the format will be when we get there. But I do believe that AI should superpower the strength of what you can create with Webflow. So where visual is one mechanism that we've unlocked, natural language and text is another. The hybrid of those, I think, could be another. There's a lot that we're working on that front, but yeah, absolutely. I think natural language is going to be a version that you'll see.
Can you draw me a big picture in a couple of years or in a couple of months? We just don't know because the progress is so fast right now. What is it in your ideal world to build a website with AI?
I think building a website with AI is a lightweight thing that is already here today that will get better. But like, I actually think that that's not the problem we're going to stop at. Like, I think we're in this creation phase right now. We're in this phase where with AI, I can create a website, I can create an app, I can create a picture, I can create all these things. You should be able to say, I have a conversation, I'm building this business and I want a website that does these things. And I want it to reflect the power of this brand, and I want it to evoke this kind of emotion, and I want it to look like this, and here's some other things I want to include. Like, we already can do that today, and the results may vary. Sometimes it's the prompting, sometimes it's the technology. I think that that is a very real future that we're going to unlock, where what you articulate and what you get is going to get very, very close to perfect. Where I actually think we aren't spending enough time talking is, once you've created the website, then what? The web is so much more exciting now because of AI. And we've been on this transformation for some time. This isn't, just the past 2 or 3 years, but like, we went from a world where you would publish like a static website and millions of people would come to it and they'd all get the same experience. And it's kind of funny because it feels so silly that that's the case, right? Because the constraints aren't there. Like, imagine e-commerce, right? You go into, let's say you go into the Gap today.
Mm-hmm.
I go in the Gap, you go in we're all going into the same Gap. It's laid out the same way. There's racks in the same place. There's the same clothing there. And we all see the same thing. And as they add a new item, they just put it on a new rack. And they can only change it so much because the confines of the building are the same, right? It's a brick and mortar. When you go online, it's kind of silly to see the same Gap. I'm like, it's not like you have a brick and mortar store and you can only fit it within these 2,500 square feet, and that, the walls are in one place and the racks are stuck in one place. Like, it should be highly dynamic. Because the web, you don't have those constraints. But for some reason, we've applied physical constraints to what the web should be.
That's true.
People have thought, like, why can't I be more dynamic? And we've run into this issue where they're like, well, I just don't have the time, right? It's so much work just to build a website. It's so much work just to get it up there and running and like just operating, that I can't possibly take the next step to build a dynamic experience. And I think right now, what AI has done is it's unlocked this capability that we can go faster, that we can actually bring the dynamism to the web. And so we can have a different experience for you versus me. We could have a different experience based off of your geo, based off of whether you've been there before, based off of the information I know about you. And more importantly, every time you come back, that experience starts to cater more effectively to you. And that is the thing that's most exciting, because I'm like, once I've built my website, I want my website to be constantly transforming. I want it to transform for the audience that's coming, to create these hyper-personalized experiences that are catered to them. And I shouldn't be treating every visitor the same. I should treat them as very different individuals who have very different purposes and goals. And if I'm the right place to go to interact with, like, I want to offer them a very catered experience.
Yeah, and then you can add wearables to it and glasses and all of that, because how it will look when you look at through the glasses, right? It's a completely different experience and view. That's super exciting.
This is why once we get over this hump of, right now, I think we're all so excited to see what we can create. We'll then get to the phase where we can talk about dynamic experience, because if you look at all of my accounts, like, I'm playing with everything out there. I've built like so many websites on every single service. I've built like 70 apps across the different sort of app builders. But the real question is, like, did I just create all this internet garbage? The answer is yes, I did. I built all these, like, how many of the things am I actively using? It's like a very small subset, but the things I'm actively using, those are the prime products that go into this next phase of this dynamic experience. It's this iteration moment, right? Where I'm going to nurture these products. I'm going to build them, and I'm going to actually build them for others. And I'm going to create sustaining value. And this next phase, I think, is the most exciting. And that's where, from a Webflow perspective, as we help people build sites, that's fantastic. And I want to make it really easy for anyone to build a website, but I want to make it even easier for those websites to have sustaining value. And so I want to add on through the entire life cycle of that experience. How do you drive dynamic, catered experiences to your different users? How do you leverage insights? How do you run experimentation? How do you think about managing your assets and distribution of content? Like, that's the cool challenge.
That is super, super exciting. I wanted to go back to the SEO that you mentioned. Everybody's still optimized for SEO.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think SEO is actually dead? What's the next step for it? And how to explain people that they should optimize for other things?
It's funny. Maybe this is aging me, but I don't think SEO is dead. I think it's just it's convenient, because anytime a new technology comes around, we're always like, oh, this is dead, right? Like, I remember early on, Spotify came out and people were like, radio is dead. Radio is still a multi-billion-dollar industry right now, right? And that was like almost 20 years ago. When digital streaming came out, everyone's like, broadcast is dead. No, it's going stronger than ever. So I don't actually believe that there is this sort of like one thing comes in and the other thing is gone. I think what we're about to do is what we've done with most technology shifts, in that now that we have a completely new methodology to do what we did before, which is search, right? It is now creating a bifurcation where yeah, you're still going to get organic search traffic. You're still going to have to think about SEO. That doesn't go away. But now you have to take a part of your brain and think about what people are calling AEO or GEO. But like you're going to have to optimize for right now chatbots, but whatever new sort of like format comes out, you're going to have to think about optimizing for that. And all it does is it adds a body of work, and it adds a body of work to what was a sort of one-dimensional experience, right? Like we thought about SEO with regards to our websites. So now we have to think about SEO with our websites and AEO. And the question is like, does one start to challenge the other? Things that you might do to drive AEO, does that hurt your SEO score? And so those are the things that I'm thinking about a lot and helping our customers navigate, because, the principles of SEO have always been around like, how do you think about keywords? How do you like create enough sort of like links that show up that like give you more strength? How do you think about the reference points where links are pointing? A lot of that impacts SEO. AEO is a lot more weighted, which is funny, around authenticity. So it's like, it looks at like your content, how authentic your content is. It looks like you're at how you're being referenced on other like channels, like Reddit gives you a higher rating or Quora gives you a higher rating. It looks at the freshness of your data. So like what was recently published, how often has it been published? It looks at how easy it is to understand your site structure. So they're very different things that you have to optimize for. So now you're just thinking about two entire sets of things. Luckily, we haven't seen one where like one hurts the other yet, but they are, very much going in different directions in terms of how they rank authenticity. Yeah.
That's very interesting. We'll need to create a guide. Do you have a guide?
We don't have an official guide, but what we have done is we put out a couple of best practices. So we have a couple of webinars that we did, and we've posted blogs afterwards with summaries with a handful of best practices that we've seen. The reason why we don't have an official guide is, unlike most technology changes, every few days now you're seeing new models, and every model has a very different methodology. So, your AEO isn't consistent because it's not like, all of them work the same way. You have to think about, how is Gemini thinking about this versus how is ChatGPT versus how is Claude. And so I would say we're early days as a society on understanding exactly how this is going to look and how it's going to work. And I think even models are still continuously adjusting their weightings. But the folks who are going to do well in this are the ones who are testing constantly and iterating. And so we have a couple of best practices, but we'll see if they're still best practices in like 3 weeks, right?
Yeah. We don't have that much time, so let me switch to other questions I have.
Okay.
We talk a lot about agents, talking to agents and human level intelligence, even AGI and super intelligence. So what is AGI for you? And if AGI will happen, we'll be able to design, write code, deploy products and websites. Would it use tool like Webflow, or will it replace it?
I'll step back first, like step outside of just the software realm of like, what is AGI and like, what is the role of AI within humanity? My personal belief is that with AGI, it is ultimately an accelerant and a partner to humans. I think the thing that makes us unique as a species is we are inherently creative and opinionated, and we are so dynamic in that we constantly change. The way that AI has been built right now is that it is meant to reflect human intelligence and synthesize it at, levels of capacity well beyond what we've ever seen before. And with AGI, it's the ability to iterate off of that and actually generate and create. And I think it'll mimic some of those human behaviors, but I don't fundamentally believe that it will replace them. And so if I then apply that back down at a software level, AGI will fundamentally change the experience of like how we would need to interact with software to accomplish a task. And it could potentially accomplish the majority of that task. But I believe that it will still need some amount of direction or perspective from a human lens to drive it. Will Webflow exist? I hope so. Will Webflow today, as we interact with it, exist? Probably not. It'll be fundamentally different, right? Like I think the experience will be fundamentally different, but what we look to accomplish, I think will be very similar in that we want to help people represent their digital experiences and more effectively tell their stories and create. That is something that I think has lasting value.
It's so hard to stay that flexible in such changing times.
It is. I mean, part of it is like you have to be fearless. And so, what does that mean for the business? What does that mean for how we operate? Like, we're going to have to wildly disrupt ourselves. And like, disruption is painful and it's scary. And like, you have these huge risks to like, what happens to your revenue? And like, there are a lot of scary things that can happen. But I fundamentally believe that if we're trying to do something that is inherently valuable for humans and for businesses, I think we'll find a way through it. It'll just be a really interesting journey to get there.
Thank you. Yeah, let's be very human. And can you tell me what book shaped you as a person? And it can be a book that helps you with business or just completely unrelated.
You're going to now think that I'm like a total alien. My favorite book and my favorite series, I read this entire series every single year. I've been doing it since I was like in elementary school or middle school. But I don't know if you've ever read Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. I love sci-fi, but Orson Scott Card wrote Ender's Game, and it's a 4-part series. It's Ender's Game, Speaker for the Dead, Xenocide, and Children of the Mind. And then there's a 4-part parallel series called Ender's Shadow, and it's like, Shadow of the Hegemon, Shadow of the Giant, Shadow. And it is the full Shadow series, but there's about 8 books in the official collection. Technically, there's a couple more that were added, but I reread them all every year, like religiously. Ender's Game is a really, why are you going to think I'm an alien? Ender's Game is about the 6-year-old boy who is sort of trained to go into space and save humanity. And he and a team of other children are trained at this thing called battle school in space, and they go battle what's called the buggers, which are like these sort of ant-like alien species that had attacked Earth a long time ago, and they're now like flying out there to defeat the buggers once and for all. But what's so interesting about the series is you see what leadership development looks like through a child's eyes, and you see how humanity actually has determined that the best people to protect the world are these children, these brilliant children that they ship into space. They sort of manipulate them, but they teach them, the art of war and theory and strategy. And like, ultimately they train this kid Ender to become the leader, the leader of the world, the leader of this battle school. And he is empathetic. He's kind. He is absolutely brilliant. He perseveres, even though at the time he's the smallest. Like, some of these kids are like, 10, 12, 13 years old. He's a 6-year-old that's going into space to save the world. I love this book because you see how a child is sort of observing, the concept of war and battle, and like how he assimilates with other children, builds friendship, builds loyalty, builds followership, and then ultimately is a leader that they would all select to save humankind. And he takes on this burden of leadership, and his biggest strength is his empathy. Like, one of the lines in it is he could never defeat an enemy unless he loved them, because it's once you love someone that you really understand their weakness. And it's like one of the most beautiful lines in this book. And it's such an awesome book in general. It's like really fun. Don't watch the movie. The movie's terrible, but it is. It's such a great book. I read that a lot because I think about the importance of like good leadership. Good leadership is not one of authority. It's one of influence. And like, that book is probably through and through one of the best examples of it.
You mentioned kindness. And I think what we really lack in the discourse is a kind AI.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe that's what we need to build next.
That would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. Thank you so much for this conversation. It was a lot of fun and super interesting.
Of course. Thank you so much for making the time.